Thanks for joining this morning. Today we're going to run through our P6-Scrubber, and with this latest version, we've got some new features that Sue will run through. I'm joining you from Calgary. My name is Nicole Jardin. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald, and Sue is joining us from Wyoming, and she's going to do the heavy lifting. She's going to run through the software and show you how it works. So we're going to do some live presentation. So we built P6-Scrubber in earnest a few years ago, and we've been updating it, upgrading it, adding features, quite a few features in the last few years with requests from different clients. So one of the struggles that we all have when we're running P6 is to make sure that our database stays nice and tidy, doesn't get inundated with different codes, user defines, global data that we don't want in our system because we're using importing either XCRs or XMLs to get different consultants, contractors, schedules brought into our system. So it's a pretty common struggle. So I thought the first thing I would do is just ask some of the participants, and feel free to answer if you wish. How do you deal with P6 projects from outside P6? So we've got clients who have a different database that they bring the imports into, and then they clean them up in there. I've seen people very scarily go into the XCR and start modifying them, which is not a great idea. We've seen people corrupt the XCR and screw things up badly, so it's not a great idea, but we've definitely seen people do it. Or import into their existing database and then do cleanups. Okay, so it doesn't look like anyone wants to answer, so we'll just continue and see if people do go ahead and respond. So those are the most common things that we see people do. Now, because not everyone, ideally you have everyone working in the same environment, but that's not always possible for a variety of different reasons, security and so on. So importing becomes one of the options that you have. It used to be mostly XCRs, but we're seeing more and more people using XMLs as well. And Sue is going to show you that we have XML support in this latest version. Now, you don't want to have your P6 system full of things that you don't need in there. Plus, there's a chance that you override existing global data. So there is a potential for collision. So she's going to run through and show you how we tried to deal with that in P6-Scrubber so that you avoid that kind of situation. We also have some clients that have very specific requirements in their specifications on the data that they're expecting people to have in their P6. So P6-Scrubber will help you solidify that, make sure they're following the requirements and the specifications, and allow you to control that before things come into your database. So I'm going to ask another quick question. How much time do you spend each month cleaning up these different imports? Now, obviously it depends. It depends on the kind of projects that you're doing. It depends on how much interaction you have with outside companies sending you imports. Okay, so some of our clients have imports coming to them every few weeks, and they've got 50 to 100 schedules on the go. So that's a lot of time dealing with data coming in and keeping it clean. Okay, so it's going to vary, of course, on your requirements, but the potential of saving a lot of time and also having problems if you've got collisions in data is really what the benefits are for using P6-Scrubber. So let me just generally explain how it works, and then Sue will actually show it in action. So first and foremost, we're going to have a file, whether it be an XCR, whether it's an XML, whether it's got one project or multiple projects, and potentially with the XML, it could have the baselines. So we want to create a definition of what we're going to scrub and set those definitions up. And then in the definitions, we've got a variety of things that it's going to do. So it's going to take care of the POBS and the risk types that have been stragglers over the latest versions. I think Oracle's finally got a handle on that, so I think that's becoming less of a problem. But depending on who you're interacting with, you still could have some of those stragglers coming at you. Then we also deal with calendars, and we deal with global data depending on what you want to work with. So all the user-defined fields, all the codes, cost codes if you're using that. And we've got additional validations and rules that you can put in. So some clients have specific naming conventions for project IDs and things like that. We can tackle those as well. So you basically set up a definition. You can have many definitions. The definitions can be potentially shared to a group. And then you would run those definitions each time you bring in a new, the XCR XML and validate against it, okay? And then that will create an output file, and that's the file that you bring in to P6. Okay, so that's the general overview. We're going to actually jump in and take a look, and I'll hand it back over to Sue so she can do the deep dive on how the software works. So let me just switch over and transferring over to you, Sue.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead here and share my screen so that you can see as I'm working in the tool how this all comes together. So with P6-Scrubber, we have two different versions. One is a standalone version. So that means that it's not connected to a database at all. You would essentially create your definitions outside of your database without any guidance from what is already existing in your database, which works fine. But what is really kind of helpful is actually having a live version. The live versions are actually connected to the databases so you can see what information is already in your database to kind of help guide you and set up your definitions as you go. So we could point it at several different databases if you have that need. Once you have the database, and I'm going to use the live version today, by the way, but you would select your database, do your put your credentials in, and essentially sign in. Now, this is the front page, and you can see over here on the left-hand side, I've got some topics that we have where we can control the information underneath those topics. And so we've got some sub items here. Now, as I'm going to touch on a few of them and kind of look at what we would do to create a definition essentially from scratch without any, any input from anywhere else except for our in this case our database. Okay, so if I go in and let's say under each one, under project and activities, we have this ability to verify our our names against a pattern, our names and our IDs. So if you had specifications that you wanted someone to or that you had a contractor wanting to follow these, this is a means in which you can verify that pattern that you have set out for them. So with every module that we have here, we have the ability to turn it on and off. So I would enable this. And then I'm just going to take a look at a project ID pattern. So I have a variety of ways that I can validate what that pattern needs to be. Now I can do something simple like a contains or a starts or an ends with. But what's really kind of powerful is this simple pattern here. If I do a simple pattern and I start building it out, it's going to kind of guide me along as I go. So maybe I need to have, letters to start out with. I would select the letters and I would say, okay, they need to be uppercase, and I need actually two letters here. So I'm looking for two letters that are uppercase to begin with. I can apply that, and then I can click again. And now I need to have some numbers. I need to have five of them. So I can go in and I can say, then look for 5 digits that are going to be following those two letters. Now, after the two letters and the 5 digits, I expect to see a dash to do the rest, you know, to separate here. So I can go in and I can say, okay, I want to say specific text. So in this specific text, this is where I can, maybe put my dash that I'm looking for. Now, after this, maybe there's a variety of different things that could follow that dash. So I can go in and I can say, okay, I want any character after this, and it's going to be unlimited. We don't know how long those extra characters are going to be. So I'm going to put a 0 here to determine that there can be an unlimited number of characters following that dash. So once I have this all built out, we put a little test pattern area here so that you can test to make sure that what you have defined is going to work for what you're looking for. So right now I don't have anything, so it's giving me a red and it's saying, hey, this doesn't match your pattern. So if I did go in and I say I wanted to match my pattern, I can go in here and I can uh, select a pattern or type in a pattern or uh, a value that would represent it. And then I've got a green light showing me that, yes, this indeed does match what you have defined here. So this is informational for you, but it is something that's going to be checked when you run P6-Scrubber against your XER or XML. Now, let's say I wanted to we have codes. And so we have codes in projects, in activities, in resources. So what I can do here is, let's say I want to take a look at activity codes. Again, I'm going to enable this. And a lot of these modules are very, very similar into what they are showing you here. So if I'm building this from scratch, I can go in and I can say, okay, I want to add a activity code that I want to check. And it's going to be a global one, but I could change it to a project one if I needed to. But this one's going to be global. And I want to check a code type name in my file to see if vendor's there. And it's going to start giving me some coaching as I go along. So it's going to say, okay, you need to have an action of some sort. What do you want to do if it finds this vendor global activity code? So then I can go in, I can select my action, and I'm going to say, okay, I want to keep that code. And in my database, I actually have the same thing. So I can pop this open and I can say, yep, I want it to be to match my vendor. So I'm going to get this green check mark here that tells me this is indeed in your P6, that the P6 environment that I'm connected to. Now, if this is a global code and I wanted to roll it down to a project level code, I have the ability to do that here in my roll down. So I could check mark this and let P6-Scrubber know that I want to keep this vendor code. However, I do want to roll it down. Now, in my case, I don't want to do that. I already know that my vendor code is there. So now I need to deal with some dictionary values because there's going to be values involved with this vendor code. So if I click the little plus sign next to my vendor, it's going to open up a little area here that's going to say, okay, what's in your dictionary? So I could add these one by one if I wanted to, or to make it a little easier on myself, I could actually go in and I could do a bulk edit here. Now, what a bulk edit is going to allow me to do is copy and paste the values either from a spreadsheet or even from your P6 environment. if you're wanting to do that. So if I go over to my P6 environment and I go into my activity codes and I have this vendor code here and I want to make sure I'm displaying all my vendor values. Then I can go and, well, now I'm not on my vendor anymore. Let's go to my vendor. I can go and I can highlight all of these. I can copy them. Oh, not cut. I want to copy them. And then go back into P6-Scrubber and paste these in this bulk area. So it's going to add all of those values. However, before I say, okay, I want to apply this, I've got a couple of things that this is going to allow me to do. Number one, my header came over when I copied this. So I have the option to remove that first row that is usually your header. Now, I also don't need those colors in there. I don't need the color value. So I can choose to just leave those values off of my import or my bulk edit, and then I can apply it. And that's going to go in and it's going to populate all of those new values that I have in here. And so then it's going to go again. It's going to say, okay, what do you want to do with this? So I'm going to want to keep it. I do have another value in here that I can map it to. And this is my definition. So I can go and I can add these as I need to on the fly, so to speak. Now, I have two other little boxes here. One pertains to the code itself, and the other pertains to my dictionary. So I can choose once I save this definition, if I have any other codes other than the ones that I have defined here, what do I want to do with them? Now, if I leave this open, it's going to allow those additional codes to come in. If I check mark it, it's going to remove anything additional that is not defined in this area for my codes. The same thing goes with my dictionary here. On my dictionary, if I wanted to allow new codes to come in, I would keep this open and allow those new codes. If I didn't want any new codes to come in, I would check mark it. It's going to remove anything that I do not have defined. Now, I'm just going to take a look at UDFs because, like I said, a lot of these are fairly similar in the way that you set them up. Again, I would need to enable them. But on UDFs, depending on which module I'm in which subject area, I have the ability to pick and choose which subject area of UDFs or user defines I want to come in. So if I wanted my activities to come in, my activity UDFs, but no expenses or steps or issues or risks, maybe I don't use those, this is going to remove them from that file, that XCR XML. Now, you can go ahead and you can define everything as you go along. But we've tried to make that a little bit easier on you when you do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually blank out what the definition I already have because I don't want to save this. I want to show you an easier way to do this. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, I want a new definition. And it's going to ask me, do I want to discard those changes? And I do. Now, I have a file from my contractor that is ready for me to import. And I want to use that file to build my definition out. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to import that file into P6-Scrubber so I can take a look at what is already in there. So when I go to import my files, I can go in and browse to where I need to be. Now, today, I'm going to use an XML file because we are able not only to handle XCRs, but we're able to handle XMLs. So I'm going to grab that XML and I'm going to say I want to import that data in to P6-Scrubber so that I can take a look at what is there and build a definition based on that. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And then as I go down, um, I'm going to start at the top here and I'm going to say, okay, well, I have some project codes that I want to deal with in here. And it looks like, this one doesn't have a dictionary validation. I mean, I don't have a validation on this dictionary. Does exist within my database because it matches P6. However, if I open my dictionary, I can see that this value dist5 is not there. Well, I do have it there, but maybe I don't have my dictionary value named the same. Doesn't have the same ID. Well, what I can do is I can go here and I can clean that up, and I'm having trouble scrolling, so I apologize for that. Oh, and now I've got a weird thing going on. Let me log out really quick and see if I can get that corrected. I don't know what I've done with my cursor here. Well, it seems to be working, so we'll go for it. So sorry, I'm going to have to import that file again. Okay. And I'm going to go into my codes and open up my district again. So when I go into here, I'm still not able to scroll. I can actually see that I've got a D5 value that is um, part of my dictionary that already exists. So when I tab out of there, it's going to go in and it's going to say, okay, I have this dist5. I'm going to keep that, but I'm going to rename it or remap it to this D5 value that I have within my Primavera dictionary. So I can do that in this case. Now on these other ones, the client is there. It looks like everything is good. If I take a look at my type of schedule, I hover over that warning sign. I have two options here. Now it does not exist in here. I could tell it to keep it, and it's going to create it. But if I want it to do that, I need to go in and I need to acknowledge that I want it to be created. So I would check mark this. It's going to change it to a star, indicating to me that I'm going to allow this to come in and create a new one. And now it's telling me that my dictionary values are going to be, are not there as well. So I would need to say, okay, I want to go ahead and okay that to come in. Now, in my case, I really don't want that to come in. So I have another option. I can just simply go at this top level and say I want to scrub that out. And it's going to then remove that matches there because I don't need to match anything because I'm going to scrub it out. I'm going to remove it from my file. Now on UDFs, again, I have that option. I can enable this. I don't use WBS user defines. So I'm going to check mark that and say I want to remove those all the time. I'm going to come down to my subject area where I have my WBS, and I'm going to say I want to remove that one out. And then I'm going to look at some of these other items that I might want to do and decide what I want to go. Now, I do see that I have this this submittal date here. Now, I know that we have a date that for my submittal. However, it's not called submittal date. What I can do is I can go in again and I can take a look and see what I have, and it looks like I have a submitted date there. So I'm going to remap that to my submitted date so that it is now matching. Now I can do the same with, of course, my activity codes. And my activity codes are going to show me what scope those are under. And I can decide what I want to do with these as I go along. Same as the project codes. But I do have that added layer of showing me those project codes that are involved. UDFs work the same, except for we have a few more subject areas that we can decide how we want to deal with these. Now, resources. This is something that we have a number of things that we can deal with concerning our resources. So I can remap my resources, but in some cases, we don't necessarily just want to remap them. Maybe we have a parent tree in our resource dictionary that we want to land them under. So what I can do is up here at the top, it's asking me, where do you want to land this parent resource? If I put nothing in, it's going to just land it, land these, underneath just in a list. But if I have created a resource parent that I want to land those under, I can check mark that and I can say, this is where I want to put these resources when I bring them in. So I have the ability to do that. Now, when I bring these resources in, I would actually like to prefix them, but I don't want to have to go through every single name and ID and prefix them here. Well, we do have another area where we can like bulk add a prefix to pieces of data. And that's called our simple scrub down here at the bottom. I have this option. So if I go to this simple scrub, I can see that I have the ability to prefix what I need to here. And I'm not scrolling. I need to relog in. I apologize because my scroll is for whatever reason not working out. So I am just going to reload this page and see if I can get that to.
Maybe, Sue, you could zoom out or in as well.
Okay.
Just
Yep.
control
Okay. Good idea.
plus or
Good
minus.
idea. Yep. All right. I will try that if it doesn't work. All right. Now I got to import that file again. I apologize. So let me get that imported in here. And then we'll look at how we do that simple scrub on those resources.
While you're doing that, let
Mhm.
me just run through a few questions that were put in the chat.
Okay.
So one of the questions was, does it work on earlier versions than version 20? And the answer is yes. So we're basically using an XER. So any XER that you get, we should be able to read it. And we've definitely worked on it specifically with version, I think, 16 plus, which is pretty old. So yeah, you shouldn't have any trouble with working file that you get from an older version. In terms of how we sell it, so it's not sold per user, it's sold per scrub. And a scrub is a project. And we have a minimum pack of 5 up to an unlimited yearly pack for companies who do a lot of importing. So that's how we sell it. So it's not a per user. So if you wanted to give it to 5 users, you can definitely do that. So we count the scrubs that you're doing. Okay, so those were 2. We'll touch on the rest as you keep going.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
So just to recap, I want to prefix my IDs for my resources, but I don't want to have to go in because you can see I've got 4 pages of resources. That's going to be kind of a pain to have to do that. So if I go down into this simple scrub area here, what I can do is I can enable this, and you can see that I can prefix a number of data items here. So I'm going to go to my resource and I'm going to say I want to put an SCR in front of those. And I actually want to use a dash after that. So if I wanted to do that as well with any of the other data items that are coming in, I could certainly prefix them and let them come in with that prefix on it. Another thing that I can choose in just one click is whether or not to import that entire piece of data. So if I don't want any project code types coming in, I can just say do not import here, and then I don't have to mess with anything up at the top where I have my project data. So maybe you don't want to bring any project types in. I can just click this here and it's going to take care of it for me. Another thing I want to point out, and we'll go over this a little bit when we look at calendars in depth, but not only can I choose to not import a global calendar, I can also choose to roll down any global calendar that I want to, that I have in this file. Now, this is important, as Nicole said, because if you have a calendar name or a calendar ID that is the same as one that is being imported in, and they are not defined the same way, that imported calendar is going to overwrite the definition of your calendar. So it's probably a good idea that you roll that down to the project level, and then you won't have that collision happening when you import the file. So this is a nice little area to do some fast manipulations to your um, data that's in the file. So recall. Uh-oh, looks like I got an error here. What the heck? All right, let me try to reload again. There we go. And I bet I'm going to have to re-import. Seems like I'm having trouble with my computer today. So as I'm going down, I have codes, of course, for resources that I can deal with the same way that we dealt with our other activity codes and project codes, as well as the UDFs in here. We also have the ability to control our units of measure and doing a remapping. So in this file, I don't have one that doesn't map, but if I did have one, let's say this came in as a lowercase or something like that. What I could do is I could say, okay, this came in as the lowercase, and I know that I have linear feet out there. I can go and can select it, and I could remap it to go into the definition or the abbreviation that I have for my own units of measure. That way, you're not going to get several units of measure that actually are indicating the same thing. So we can do a remapping on those units of measure. Now, with calendars, we have, of course, 3 levels of calendars that could potentially be here. In my global level, I do have the ability that I can pick and choose individually what I want to do with each calendar. In my case, I'm gonna roll them down, and just so that I don't collide with anything. But I could have also just check marked in that simple scrubber area that I wanted to roll everything down. Now, these are going to be defined, of course, when I save this definition. So I can also click on this little check mark here that's going to say we're going to roll down any other additional calendars that come in. So I don't have to worry about that collision at the global level. Now, in the project area, these are for informational purposes. We expose these so you can see what kind of calendars are at your project level. Let's go, if you had more than one project contained within this XML in this case, what you could do is see where these are actually being used, which project they're being used in. Now, let me go back to my global calendars. I forgot to kind of touch on this. I can also rename my calendar if I want to as well. So let's say I'm rolling this down to the project level, and I want to make this the same as maybe my Rapley 7-day calendar. I could go to my 7-day calendar here, that I'm going to just roll down and change anything that has that contract Jefferson 7-day and make it a Rapley 7-day. So I have the ability to also remap these as well. Now on resource calendars, the same thing could occur. If I had calendars that were going to collide in here, maybe I want to select a different calendar. Maybe I've made another calendar that just says my Scrubber standard 5-day resource is what I'm going to use for this particular resource calendar. And it's going to go ahead and remap that for me. Roles work essentially the same as they do in as resources. So I have that ability to remap them to a new ID if I need to, um, and or I could do a new name. It's going to tell me whether I have a matching one in Primavera, and I can decide whether I wanted to keep that and what I want to do with it. We can also handle cost accounts. So if you have cost accounts that are coming in, if these are matching, great. You can choose whether you want to uh, add in additional cost accounts if they're coming in with this XCR or XML, or I can choose to say, no, I don't want anything additional coming in and actually have those scrubbed out of my file. Now, this last piece that I have not touched on yet is the OBS. So when you are importing in the OBS from the source system is assigned on your project. So if you wanted to replace that with an OBS that you already have currently in your Primavera system, we can take a look at that and, well, kind of bumped up here, and we can go down and we can decide, okay, this is what I want my new OBS when it's imported to be set to. So my responsible manager will be changed to a responsible manager that we already have defined. So it's going to go and change that. And when you import it in, it will already be set to that responsible manager. So once I had everything set in my definition, everything is there, it's defined. What I can do is I can now save that definition. So I'm going to go down to save and load definition, and I'm going to do a save as. So I'll just say that this is my demo example here. Um, oops. Actually, I'm going to put demo definition, and I could put notes in to clarify what this is for, and then I could save that definition. Now, when I save it, it's going to show me up here in the upper right-hand corner that this is now a definition that I have applied. It's saved, it's applied. So once I have the definitions defined, I can just go ahead and I can use them. So I've defined these, I've scrubbed some things, I've left, I came back, I've gotten a new XML or XAR that I want to scrub. I don't have to do that definition again. I can go into my save and load definition. I can, excuse me, I can select the definition I want to apply, and I can tell it to load. So you can see my definition changed, and I've loaded a new definition in my area here. So I've got these already signed out. Then all I'm going to have to do is now go scrub my file. I already have it, so I'm going to select that I want to scrub the file. I'm going to go out and I'm going to grab the file that I do want to scrub. Maybe I want to scrub several files. I can actually go and do that. And then I can open, you can see that they're lined up, and they will all be scrubbed according to the definition that I have applied. So it's going to go through, it's going to make those changes, and it's going to give you some output. Now, the first thing I want to take a look at is the report. This is the first time I've run this definition. I want to make sure that it's changing what I wanted it to change. Make sure things are being handled. So I have a report here that I can take a look at. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to review the report, and it's going to open that up in an HTML file for me. And it's going to give me a breakdown of what happened when that definition was run on my existing XML in this case. So I'm going to scroll down. I have a summary of what has happened, whether I had items that were handled or not handled. So red and green, of course. And then it's going to show you, if some were kept, if they were removed, if I had some that were changed. As I scroll down further, I'm going to get some more detailed information on each one of those scrubs. So for my project dictionary, I can see that I had some things that changed because I have that red not clean there. On these gray tables is what my definition said. It's what I had defined there. As I scroll down, I'm going to see that I have some colored tables that are telling me what happened when that definition was run on my file. So my client was kept. Nothing happened to it. It wasn't scrubbed, not remapped, anything. My type of schedule, remember I decided to remove that out. So that has been removed. And on my district, I had a dictionary change. So if I go down further, I can see my dictionary, my district dictionary used to be a DIST5 that came in. It's been now remapped to a D5, and it's telling me that it was remapped here. So it's going to do that breakdown for you for each one of these validations so you can make sure that this is what indeed you wanted to happen according to your definition. Now, if this is fine, we're great. We're ready to now download our new files, our scrubbed files. So if it's not, I would simply go back, adjust my definition, correct whatever was not being handled as I thought it was going to be, and rerun. But in my case, I'm happy with this. So I'm going to download my results. Now, when I download my results, let me go in and I'm going to find, I'm going to just put this into a area here so I know where it is. It's going to download 2 files for me. The first file, and I'm going to stretch this out a bit so we can see it, is my scrubbed result of my XML. So I've got my XML here, and I've got an appendage on this that is showing me what date it was scrubbed, as well as the time it was scrubbed. Now, the other file that comes out is a copy of that report that we just looked at. So if I wanted to give feedback immediately to a contractor or whomever provided that schedule for me, I could send this entire report if I wanted to, or I could copy and paste pieces and parts of the report and just focus on several of the other items that, that I wanted to address here. So this is what is produced from your scrubbed file. Now I'm ready to import this. So in the interest of time, I've already imported that XCR file that or that XML file that was scrubbed. And I'm showing you that right here. Now, when we create this file, by default, we are actually setting some flags here that are going to guide you and let you know what happened to the data within that file when the scrub actually was performed on it. So I can see that my project ID, everything was clean. Nothing happened, so I have a green check mark here. But I did have, remember those project codes and the dictionaries that were, I had one that I scrubbed a project code, and then I had that dictionary value that was remapped. And so it's going to give you kind of an accounting via these indicators as to what happened with your file. Now, by the same token, I have indicators on each activity as well. So let me just pull this down a little bit. So I can see my vendor codes look really, really good. Everything was green. They came over without any changes to them. However, I had some work type things that happened on my activity level. And it's alerting me to the fact that some of those were removed. Some of them just they came out. And so I might want to take a look at that and see, should these be actually values that are assigned here. Then I have my discipline code, which I had some changes to. So I had some changes to the discipline code, which are giving me that red X. And then I've got some that are also have been, that are not populated as well. And then again, on my cost accounts, those all came in and look really good. Now, another thing that we produce is, you can see I have a notebook here. So in my notebook, essentially, we are bringing in that same report that we looked at earlier, as well as we have that HTML copy. So we know that the idea is to not clutter your system with things that are not necessarily that you don't want in there. So we've given you the option on both of these, whether you want to have the indicators produced and or the notebook produced. So there's one last area that I just want to visit in the P6-Scrubber, and that is that area at the very top here called General. This is where, by default, the notebook file as well as those indicators are turned on. If you didn't want those indicators to come in, if you didn't want those produced with your file, you could certainly turn that off and say, I don't want any indicators. All I want to come in is the notebook. If I didn't want either, I could turn them both off. Now, another thing we have here is that we talked about, versions of XCRs. With our XML, we don't really have to worry about a version, but with our XCRs, we do. If we receive an XCR that is a higher version than where we are importing into, we have given you the ability to actually demote that XCR to the version that you need so that you can import it successfully. So this one was created in 21.12. And let's say I want to import it into a 19.12. That's the version that I have. I can go ahead and when I run this, I can say I want to create this file in a 19.12 version instead of the higher version that it was created in. So we also have the ability to demote those as well. So a lot of different things that you can do with P6-Scrubber, from very focused, concentrated remappings down to just simply maybe, putting a prefix on it. We've tried to make this very flexible and to be able to handle anything that might want to be handled in your XCR or XML. So before I hand it back over to Nicole, do we want to answer some questions before I leave in case I need to refer in here, Nicole?
Okay, I don't see any new ones
Okay.
at the moment. But that last point where Sue was saying you don't have to bring in the notebook, you don't have to bring in the flagging. That's extra valuable if you're a consultant or a contractor. You're looking to use the scrubber to take your file from your main database, clean it before you give it to the client, which will allow you to strip out anything you don't necessarily want them to see. If you're doing things in user-defined fields, things of that nature, you can take those out and not bring in any extra stuff. Okay, I think that's everything right now.
Okay.
On the questions, I think we tackled most of them.
All right.
All right. So I will take back control.
All righty.
And do the wrap up. And certainly, if there are other questions that come through, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll tackle them. Okay, so we took a look. Sue showed you all the ability to scrub, clean, remap, rename. And then of course have the audit of what's happening, so you know what you changed. Particularly if you need some valid backup to prove what you did, that's why we did that output. Having worked in claims for many years, I know the importance of that traceability. So let's just run through a few of the benefits some of our clients have told us about. So really, the ability to give feedback very quickly to some of the problem areas of the coding structures that you've defined. If you've got a large group of contractors providing projects and you want that consistency, this really helps that happen. Now, we're not critiquing the schedule quality. We've got our P6QA tool for that, but this lets you see whether they're adhering to your standards, and of course helps make sure that the standards stay and don't get mucked up with a bunch of extra erroneous codes that you don't want in your system. Hopefully you saw that it's very configurable, and the flagging gives you that immediate feedback. So if you do the imports and you want to see, where certain groups are struggling, this is going to give you that information. The data that you want to keep, of course, is important for you for your own standards, your own reporting. Maybe you've got data warehouse hooked onto it and reporting going out into your standard reporting system, Tableau, Power BI, that sort of thing. You don't want any extra junk in your database. So this helps make sure that you've got that clean system, which of course gives you more accurate reports on the outside. Okay, so that's the real driver which made us create this. Now we support a lot of different clients in their corporate systems, and helping them keep the database clean every month is a lot of work. So we're just trying to make sure that we can save them time and save them money in the long run. So that's really what drove us to make this tool. Now, this is just one of many tools that we have. For the last 27 years, we've had programmers on our team. So our focus has always been on integration. We've done integrations into just about every tool out there. And as a result, we've built a lot of different software tools over the last few years, just to try and make using P6 much easier for the extended team. So this is just one of many. I mentioned P6QA. P6 Loader lets you move data in and out with Excel. So when we do rollouts or cleanups of databases, we use that tool a lot. We've got P6 Calculator as well that lets us add a bunch of functionality into P6. So we've got quite a few contractors doing cost control, information analysis, and various multi-currencies, costs versus sell rates in P6 with our P6 Calculator tool. So take a look at some of those if there's other things you want to know, and other things you think we can help you with. So feel free for sharing or joining up on some of the webinars. Our webinar schedule's up to date for the next few months, so you can take a look at that. Okay, so we have a few more minutes if there are any questions that are coming to people's minds. So one of the questions is, where can we look to know more about your add-ons? I think probably on our website. If you go to the tools section of our website, they're there. And certainly you can also reach out to Sue, and she can point you in the right direction as well. Okay, so we'll stay on for another minute or two. If any additional questions come up, just go ahead and chat them in. And if not, you've got Sue's email there. If you want to know more about P6-Scrubber, want to see how it could work for your team, just reach out and we'll be happy to discuss it more.